At the very end of this book, after the author's notes, there is one final image, an image of carrots. Now, is this Patrick Rothfuss simply dangling a carrot in front of us, stringing us along again? Will we ever get that reward that we actually want? Who's to say? But is this worth a read? That's what we're going to talk about. A long while since we've seen anything from Patrick Rothfuss. His last published work was The Slow Regard of Silent Things, this beautiful little novella following a side character, Ari. It's one of my favorite novellas of all time, though I can see why a lot of people might not be that interested in it. It's very much a niche novella, but that was way back in 2014. It's safe to say that fans are hungry for anything by Rothfuss, especially things promised, such as a certain charity chapter, perhaps. But finally, there's something new on the shelves. Now, it may not be what everyone wanted, and it may not even be entirely new, but it is something. This is a really beautiful story, but it's also not going to be for everyone, and there's some things in here that I didn't really enjoy, a lot that I enjoyed as well. We're gonna talk about all of that, but first of all, I just want to say that I understand if you're frustrated with Patrick Rothfuss about the charity event, how he handled that, or if you're just frustrated with the lack of book 3 in general. I have made videos on these topics in the past, many other people have made videos on it, but I am not here to talk about the controversy today. I don't really agree with all the review bombing going on. I don't think people need to give negative reviews because they're disappointed in an author, because that doesn't allow people to know if they will actually enjoy the story, and that's the point of a review. I believe regardless, whether you like an author or not, their art should be reviewed for what it is. So that's why today I am just going to be focusing on the content. This is Worth a Read, where I'll be giving you a spoiler-free review of a book, give you my thoughts and opinions, and let you know if I think it's worth your time. And today we're talking about The Narrow Road Between Desires by Patrick Rothfuss. And oh, sweet Taylu, I gotta say that this reminds me that Patrick Rothfuss's prose is timeless. The way that he puts words on a page, it's magic. But there is some things too that I don't know, I found a little cringy with this one as well, so we're gonna get into all of that. But first off, what is The Narrow Road Between Desires? And no, it is not book 3. This was originally published as a 58-page novella called The Lightning Tree as part of the Rogues anthology, compiled in part by George R.R. Martin. Now, because that anthology is relatively hard to find, I think it makes sense that eventually we'd see it re-released as its own hard copy that we could put on the shelf right beside The Slow Regard of Silent Things. But instead of just re-releasing it, Pat being Pat started tinkering with it and then perfecting it and messing around and taking a year to make additions, as he does. And the result is what we have today. It's almost double the word count of The Lightning Tree, so it's been given a generous facelift. There's a lot different here, and there's a lot that I enjoyed. I feel like this is the best version of the story. Honestly, I wish I just read this and not The Lightning Tree, because this is definitely the definitive version. Now, for this novella, Nate Taylor has contributed some really gorgeous artwork that elevates the entire experience, in my opinion. Taylor and Rothfuss have previously collaborated on The Slow Regard of Silent Things, and also on The Adventures of the Princess and Mr. Whiffle, the children's book that's not actually for children. It is evident a lot has gone into this. If you're expecting something completely different from The Lightning Tree, then you might be disappointed. But don't trust any reviewers that are saying it's the exact same thing, because it's not. It is the same story, it's the same skeleton, but it's much more refined. There's a lot of really interesting details added to this. It's sort of like a remake of The Lightning Tree. Now, if you've always been a big fan of Rothfuss's prose itself, then you're gonna be satisfied. This is a very beautifully written book. Rothfuss mentioned on his blog that one of the reasons he wanted to make this is because once a fan told him that The Slow Regard of Silent Things was their favorite book, but they didn't even know that The Lightning Tree existed. So I do feel like The Narrow Road Between Desires is more so aimed at people that never read The Lightning Tree, because like I said, I wish I had just read this version. There is some really interesting details that have been added to it though, so diehard fans of the Kingkiller Chronicle might want to read this one as well. And if you never did read The Lightning Tree, you might be wondering what this is about. Bast knows how to bargain. The give and take of a negotiation is as familiar to him as the in and out of breathing. To watch him trade is to watch an artist at work. But even a master's brush can slip. When he accepts a gift, taking something for nothing, Bast's whole world is knocked askew, for he knows how to bargain, but not how to owe. This novella is simply a day in the life of Bast, the Kingkiller Chronicle's most loved fae, as he schemes and sneaks and trades secrets with the children in the town of Noir. He traces the old ways of making and breaking, following his heart even when doing so goes against his better judgment. And really, what a beautifully written day this is. There's some really interesting details about fae magic that's explored here. Things that you didn't really learn about in The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear. I found all the details about the art of making and breaking to be super interesting. I'm kind of confused about how it all works, but I was so fascinated and just glued to the page as I was reading it. It's kind of described in this mystifying, dreamlike way, and I love it. Even if I'm a little confused, I did really enjoy learning more about fae magic. Now, the narrow road between desires may not have any world-shattering events that's required reading for the main Kingkiller Chronicle books, but there are some world-building elements here that are obviously going to appear in the final book, such as the magic I mentioned, and also embrels. Now, throughout almost every culture in history, there's always been some sort of fortune-telling device, and embrels is that for the fae. This is the way that the fae tell fortunes, and I found it to be really fascinating. I think there's also possibly some theorizing one could do when it comes to the images on these embrels, such as a man playing a flute, a woman sleeping, a candle, a moon. There's a lot of sort of cryptic images here, and I think there's definitely some meaning behind it. I'm not gonna get into spoilers though, but that is something I'd like to talk about in a future video. Now, there's also this penance piece which has been introduced that has a symbol of the Amir on it, which I find to be really interesting, and they actually released a physical version of this coin as well that you can order. I'll have a link to that in the description. And actually, Astra Publishing has sent me some physical versions of this coin, and I will be doing a giveaway of the coin at some point. I don't have them yet, they haven't arrived yet, but in a future Kingkiller Chronicle video, I will be hosting a giveaway for some of these coins. Now, we need to talk about the heart of the story, and that is Bast. You know, Bast is a side character in the main chronicle. Here, he takes the center stage, and this is a delightful exploration of Bast's character. We gain deeper insight into the complexity of Bast and who he is, and a little bit on his motivations, though he still remains a very mysterious character. There's a really great balance of humor and introspection, and of course, a little bit of mischief. I mean, this is Bast. Now, Bast is one of the fae. He is highly manipulative, but here we see a warmer side to him, especially evident as he helps a young boy that's dealing with domestic abuse. And this part of the story was really surprisingly emotional and touching. The conversations with all the children at the lightning tree when Bast is trading secrets with them, I thought was a lot of fun. I feel like Rothfuss is really good at writing that mischievous side to children. And I thought it was pretty brilliant how all the meandering events of the day kind of converge at the end. Patrick Rothfuss's writing here, it's really easy to consume, it's fast-paced, and I feel like once you start reading it, it's actually hard to put it down. So you can knock this out in an afternoon easy. There's one part in particular in this novella that stands out to me, and this isn't a plot spoiler or anything like that, but there's a scene when Bast catches this brass object that a boy drops in his hand, and the object causes Bast pain, almost like how iron affects the fae, and he suddenly thinks these violent thoughts of yeeting the boy over the cliff and how easy it would be to kill him. And it's here that we witness the more wild, feral side to the fae, and it puts into perspective just how powerful Bast is, and that he isn't human. He's something entirely different, something more wild. And obviously the child he's interacting with doesn't realize how his life could have easily have come to an end. It's this side of the fae and the darker side of Bast that we also saw in the main series when he threatened the Chronicler that I find much more fascinating than just Bast is sexy and mischievous. I really like to see more depth to his character and more shades of gray, but not like that shades of gray. Not trying to be prude, I think there's much more to explore with the fae. My biggest negative, really just the main complaint that I have, is definitely subjective. Bast is not really my favorite character, and I do cringe at times at how Patrick Rothfuss makes him sort of a thirst trap. I mean, he just released a pinup poster of Bast. I understand it's all in good fun, it's lighthearted, and there's actually some pretty funny pictures in the calendar, but it's like, there's more to Bast. There's a lot more that I find interesting to him, the darker side to him, and the wild fae to him, that I find much more interesting than just, oh, Bast is fae, he is sexy, everybody wants him in the village. I understand that's a part of the fae, but I feel like there's just more interesting things, like the mysticism to the fae, the magic, all the weird creatures in the fae realm. That's what I find interesting. There's a few bathing scenes in this novella where Bast is slowly taking off his clothes and people are kind of peeping on him, and it's like, I just kind of skim read that part because I just feel like the sexy fae thing has been so overdone. I feel like if you want that, you can read Sarah J. Maas or something. Again, I get it, that's the point of the fae, they're these beings of pure desire, but it's also just a little cringe. It kind of reads as like fan fiction a little bit, but I do recognize that's a criticism that I have. It's not going to be one for everyone. A lot of people do love Bast. They love the sexy fae trope, and they thirst over Bast, and that's completely fine. I'm not judging you, but I am just a little bit worried about how book 3 is gonna play out, because I know that Rothfuss has hinted in live streams and interviews that a lot of book 3 is going to take place in the fae, and I just hope it's not going to become a big fae orgy, because there is so much that needs to happen in book 3. There are so many unanswered questions. I love the mystery of the fae realm. I want to learn about more of the creatures like Dennerlings, and what the Cathay is, and what's in the darker side of the fae realm. And I feel like if he focuses too much on the desire part of the fae realm, it's just not going to land with so many fans that have been waiting for book 3, because it needs to focus more so on what needs to be told. And there's a lot that needs to be told in The Doors of Stone. Not that I can make demands on what he should write, I'm just giving my opinions here. Now, it's worth mentioning the author's note at the end. I found it to be really heartwarming. You can tell that Rothfuss is a good father who really cares about his kids. And it was from this author's note that I actually came to a realization about Bast that helped me rule out a theory that I had. You see, when I was reading The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, I had a theory that Bast was actually going to end up as a villain, and that he's only apprenticed to Kote/Kvothe because there's something in it for him. After all, he's a fae. I feel like we can't trust him. However, after reading this novella, I no longer believe that Bast has any ill intent for Kvothe. I think he genuinely is trying to be a good wolf, and he's trying his best to blend in with humanity, though clearly he is still a gray character, and that's something I really like. Now, in a recent interview, Pat mentions how he wants to get back in the game, how he wants to start writing things again, and he hopes that this is a nice start to it. It's kind of easing him into writing again.
I want to get back in the game.
Yeah.
And the best way to get back in the game is probably not the like immense iceberg of a conclusion to my opus or whatever fantasy monstrosity. Just being in the world again and writing again more actively, like to a purpose, to get a thing out. It's always helpful.
So while this isn't The Doors of Stone, it might be what Patrick Rothfuss needs to get back into the writing game. He might need to ease himself into it and kickstart his inspiration to get back into writing. And I hope that's the case. I mean, he has been posting a lot more on his blogs. He's been trying to be more active.
I kind of get back in the swing of things. I get to publish again, and then once the wheels are spinning, I'll keep moving forward and publishing stuff.
I try not to have too much optimism, if I'm being honest, when it comes to this, but you never know, and I hope that's the case. I hope that eventually we'll see a conclusion to the Kingkiller Chronicle. So is The Narrow Road Between Desires worth a read? I would say yes, but only for those that are like die-hard fans of the Kingkiller Chronicle. If you want to see more of Bast and just experience a day in the life of Bast, discover more about the town of Noir and its residents, and learn a little more about fae magic, then this is 100% worth your time. If you're a big fan of Patrick Rothfuss's prose, then I think you're going to enjoy this one. However, if you are expecting a lot of things to theorize about, or you're hoping to find some answers in this for the third book, then you're going to be disappointed with this. And if you're looking for something drastically different from The Lightning Tree, you're also going to be disappointed, because this is not that. It is different, but it's very subtle. It's a beautiful story. It's pretty simple, but also it just has a very touching resolution. Even though Bast isn't my favorite character, I still enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't regret reading it, but I am excited to see if this will help Rothfuss continue writing other stories. And I want to note that it says that this is it's listing this as Tales from Temerant, and it includes the Slow Regard of Silent Things in there as well. So I'm really hoping that we'll get more Tales of Temerant. Even if those come before the third book, I don't really care. I'd be happy to see some more novellas that we haven't seen yet. I know Rothfuss has mentioned that he wanted to write a story about Devi at one point, so I think that would be really great to see. Maybe a story about Eladin as well. I would love that. Now, I am hosting a read-along for The Narrow Road Between Desires over on my Discord server. You can join along and read through it and discuss with everyone. A huge thank you to all of my patrons that make these videos possible. If you want to support the channel, that is the best way to do it. I appreciate all you guys, and that's it. I'll see you on the road to Tinue.